Well, I'm up early today here at Home Depot because I've got a project that I need to get done. So I need to buy some supplies, and I'm actually going to do the building work right here in the Home Depot parking lot. Well, it's the crack of dawn. I got up at 7 a.m. It's actually 8 a.m. at the moment, and I'm going to finish my coffee before I go in and buy the lumber that I need. So what I'm doing today is I need to rebuild my bed. At over 7 years on living out of this van, things are starting to wear out, and the bed was the first big thing that I built. And so it is actually about 7.5 years old. Though I wasn't living in the van when I first built the bed, it has been in use for about 7.5 years now, so it's getting tired, it's getting weak. I have a little bit of water damage in the back because I had some leaking with a water tank that I have back here. So there's a little damage here and there to take care of. So instead of just fixing it, I've decided to go another route and just rebuild the whole thing. So the bed I've been using here for the last 7 years is a kind of a complicated design in that it has these slats, and these slats allow the bed to extend out in width to make a little bit bigger of a bed space. Now, that's great in theory and all, but it doesn't work very well in practical use in a minivan because I just don't have a lot of room here to extend the bed out. That's not a feature I'm interested in having anymore. So the new bed design is going to be much simpler, and it's based on these slats that I bought at IKEA. Lots of people use these for their bed bases because these are inexpensive, really inexpensive, and easy to work with. And since I'm back here in Seattle, where there is an IKEA, I went ahead and picked these up. Now, these are made for a twin-size bed. $30 for this set of slats. It's a remarkable deal, although I am going to have to do a bit of modification on them because these are a little too wide because I don't have enough room for a standard width of a twin-size bed, so I'm going to have to chop these down a little bit. And then I will need to make just a little quick and easy, simple base for these to sit in. And I've spent a little bit of time trying to work out in my mind how I'm going to do that. Now, there's probably a million ways I could make the bed base, but really all I need is a simple frame that has a couple of L-shaped pieces to sit these slats into and hold them in place. So I'm not the greatest guy when it comes to building, and I'm terrible with numbers. So what I've done here is I've gotten out my notepad and I've made a few little drawings, and just to kind of get this in my mind how I'm going to do this, I'll show you these drawings, but they probably won't make a whole lot of sense to anybody except me, but that's just because I'm a bit of a dunce when it comes to numbers, so I just need something visual to look at to kind of finalize the design that I've got rolling around in my head. So this is what I've come up with. I need a couple of rails that are going to be a little over 6 feet long, and then I need some pieces that tie them together that are going to be about 31 inches wide. And this is just the way I've kind of thought this out in my head, and I've drawn out this just to give me a little bit of an idea of what this looks like so that I can figure out how much lumber I need to buy. Now, I was originally thinking about making this out of metal stock, but looking at the prices of metal and looking at just how difficult it would be to work with, I've decided to go with wood. Now, I think metal is usually fairly easy to work with, but because I'm working here in a Home Depot parking lot, it would probably be easier just to use wood, and so this is kind of what I've decided to do. So I've made some notes, done some measuring, and I'm thinking I'm going to need a few pieces of 8-foot long stock, a few pieces of 6-foot long stock, and for some feet to hold it up, I'm going to need some iron pipe and some floor flanges. And I only need 3 of these because I can repurpose the 3 feet that I already have on my existing bed, so that'll keep the costs down a little bit here. Okay, the worst of this job is over. I just bought everything, so that's the hardest part of this job. $111 of stuff. Doesn't seem like $111 worth of stuff, but it is. So now I've got to get everything that I have stored under my bed out, and I'm going to have to pull the whole bed frame out. I'm going to put as much stuff as I can in the front cab, just in case I've got to go back into Home Depot and buy more stuff. I don't want to have to shuffle stuff in and out of the van here, so I'll do that. Once I get done with this, the building should be pretty quick and easy. Yeah, at times like this I realize I am a bad minimalist. This is just what I have under my bed, and there's actually a few more things still in the back of the van, and I still have a few more things out here on this cart. I'm leaving this cart here so that I'm blocking the space off, so that hopefully nobody parks here. This will be my work area. So now that I have the bed frame out, you can kind of get an idea of how this mechanism works, and this is just what I came up with off of watching other YouTube videos about how other people did it. I can also show you that there's a little bit of water damage on this end support piece, and that's just because I used to have a leaky water tank, which I have replaced, but you see there's no rot on any of the other bit of the wood, so I may actually try to use some of this structure for the new bed. I'm not sure, but I do know that I'm going to reuse these metal feet, and these are plumbing fittings. So this is just galvanized pipe that screws into a floor flange that is screwed into the wood here. So these will be repurposed for the new bed, and then I did buy a couple more because I want lots of support here. My original idea was to reuse the long pieces of the frame because I thought they could just be repurposed for the new bed, but when I took a closer look at them, they're really bowed. They look like pieces of bacon. I guess it's just all the years of me sitting on them and laying on them. They've warped quite a bit. So that meant I had to rebuild the whole thing. Oh well. You know, I've just thought of something. If I didn't build a bed frame to elevate my mattress up off the floor, that would mean I'd have less storage space in here, and that would make me a better minimalist because I wouldn't have all this space to store this stuff that I have. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't even build this bed. I should just take this lumber back and throw the mattress right in here on the floor and call it a day, shouldn't I? This has really turned out to be a good day to do this. We've got nice weather. So I'm going to use the same technique to put together this bed as I used on the last bed. I'm going to use 2 tools. It's all I really need are 2 tools. I have a cordless screwdriver, drill driver, and a cordless circular saw. This is a little mini circular saw, but it's sufficient for what I'm cutting here using small stock of wood. Then I do have a speed square that I'll use just to make sure I get good straight cuts, and I'll also use this when I'm screwing this all together to keep it square, hopefully. I'm not going to be perfect on this because I'm building this outside with hardly any real building ability of my own, but this is going to work. I mean, it worked for 7.5 years on the last bed, and I am going to use the same screws that I used on the last bed. I use deck screws. These things are super strong, and they've held up really well. In fact, I didn't use any glue on the last bed, so I'm going to do the same thing here. Just screws, no glue. Well, I've made a little mistake, even though I've been trying to watch what I'm doing. I messed up on some of my pre-drilling, so I've got some wood splitting here, which I was trying not to do. I was trying to avoid, but all I needed to do was change up my pre-drilling a little bit. So I pre-drill and then I come back and I countersink with this bit here, and then that has solved the problem. So I haven't had any more trouble now. So I'm just going to finish off this other rail, but you can see what I'm going for here. This will be the rail that will be the length of the bed, and then it'll have this little lip that will hold the little slats that go in later. So going pretty good now. Okay, I've made a few little mistakes, but nothing detrimental to the project that would make me need to stop or redo anything. I'm just working with it. So I'm putting in the feet or legs of the bed, and I'm using plumbing fittings, and these are iron plumbing fittings. This is a floor flange, and then this is a piece of 1/2-inch galvanized iron pipe, and I have some end caps on them. I forgot to buy end caps before, so I will need to go back in and buy some end caps for the ones that I bought. I need this setup because once I thread these in place, this gives me the perfect height that I had before with my old bed. If it's any lower, I can't get my propane tanks and my food bags under the bed. So important thing for me to remember and to keep to that height. The other thing is if I go too high, then I won't be able to sit upright on my bed like I'm used to. So a few things to keep in mind here. One thing that I'm a little bit worried about is that I only have one battery to share with the cordless drill and the saw, and because I've got so much sawing and drilling and screw driving to do, I'm worried that this battery's not going to hold up. I have been charging it on and off when I can, but it's not a very big capacity battery, so I've been screwing things in by hand when I can, just because if the battery goes dead and I have to wait for a while for it to charge up, then I'm not getting anything done. Although maybe it should go dead and me have to put it on the charger, because I am getting a little hungry for lunch. Might be a good thing if I was forced to stop. Oh, I do have some corn chips though. That'll tide me over for a little bit. Without my sofa to sit on, I don't really have anywhere to sit except on the floor. It's not quite as comfortable, but it does feel a lot roomier in here without the bed sofa arrangement. It's actually surprising how roomy. It reminds me of back when I first bought the van and I was building it out. When I first got the van, and I thought, wow, look at all this space. Why was I ever nervous about, fitting into a minivan? And then I started to build a little bit here and there, and all that space just went poof away quickly. But I do have enough space. That's not a complaint about the space of the van, because I like to say this all the time, and nobody really listens to me, but I like to be outside as much as possible. So like working outside today, just fine with me. I did want to sit in here for a minute because it is getting a little bit warm. So I've got my mineral water and some chips I'll snack on for a few minutes and cool down. Thinking about this, I'm really impressed with how well those Ryobi power tools are holding up. They seem to be disparaged by people that know tools, and they say, they're garbage and junk and everything. But I've had these tools for 8 years now, almost 8 years now. I bought them right before I started building out the van in anticipation of, building, and so I bought the set. Bought them at Home Depot. They came as a set with the 2 tools and then the 1 battery, and it was not very much money at the time. I think it was a really good deal, which is why I bought them in the first place. And it was always in the back of my mind, people telling me stay away from Ryobi tools because they don't last and everything. Now, I used those tools to build the first bed. I used those tools to build everything else in here. And granted, my build is very basic. There's nothing complicated about it. So they didn't get real heavy or hard use. And then, of course, they do sit around a long time. But so the tools holding up is not a surprise, but the battery holding up all this time, I really don't mind that battery like I should. I don't keep it charged very often. I pull it out and use it when I need it, and then it goes back in the bin, and it sits way under the bed here in the corner because it's not something I really use very often. So for it to be holding up all these years, I'm just amazed. So that's a glowing endorsement from me, I would say. If you are building out something and you just need an occasional tool from time to time, I don't think you can go wrong with the Ryobi tools from Home Depot here. That's not a sales pitch. I'm just saying this is something I bought years ago and happy with. Okay, I'm just about done with my brake, but I figured this would be a good time to set the base in and dry fit it just to see what it looks like. I do have to go back in and buy a couple of things that I forgot to buy the first time round, so I figured this would be a good time just to double check everything. One slight little problem, maybe, sort of, is this bed is a little bit wider than the old one, which I knew that, but it's going to be a little tight in here, and I'm a little worried about that. So there's not much I can do about this because the wheel well kind of interferes with building, and because I'm building with lumber now that has the edge on it that I didn't have before, I do have about 1.5 inches more width on this bed than my old one, which means it's going to be tight down the alleyway here. So I'm still fiddling with this, but yeah, it's a little tighter than I'd like. Yeah, it's not like there's a whole lot I can do about this. I'm kind of limited with the wheel well and the space that I'm working with. If I didn't want to sit upright when I'm sitting on my sofa, I would raise the bed up a little bit above the height of the wheel well here. But like I said, if I do that, I won't be able to sit upright. So this is probably the best compromise for sleeping and all. And if it's really bad, I can just take it apart at some point in the future and redo it. I do just want to take a second and say that this doesn't upset me at all, because this new bed design is going to be so much easier to take out of the van and rework if I need to. The other one was super heavy. I mean, it weighed probably 5 times as much as this design, and it was really awkward to get in and out of the van to make any adjustments to it. I did adjust it once. The first bed design that I made was just over-engineered and it just wasn't right. So I took it apart and redid it. And then that's part of the reason why I haven't wanted to tackle this again. It ended up just being such a huge job because that design I have is just not a good design. The slat beds like I had look like a great idea, but I think I mentioned this before, it just doesn't work out quite so well, especially in such a tight space. So I'm really happy with how this is going. I just, it would be ideal to have that little bit of extra space here in my galley, but if I need to fix it in the future, it's going to be pretty easy to fix. Remember, I didn't glue anything here, so all I need to do is undo the screws and do a little bit of cutting, put it back together again. It'll be a real simple fix if this doesn't work in the long run. Okay, so I just ran back into Home Depot and bought the little caps for the feet. So those are done and on, and now I've got to get to the tricky part, which is cutting down the slats. So these slats are going to need to be trimmed to size. These are from IKEA. They're made for a twin size bed, which is a little bit wider than my bed here, so I'm gonna have to do a little bit of trimming, and this might be a little bit difficult because there's a bow to these, and I just want to make sure that I have them centered, so I'm gonna have to trim a little bit off of each side of them so that they are even all the way across. So a little tricky, but this is the last thing I got to do, and then I can put everything else back in the van and get back to regular life. Cutting these was actually fairly tedious. I did them one at a time because this is not perfectly square. So I tried to get them to fit the best. I got one or two, like this one is not a great fit, but most of them are in there nice and tight and they're not going to move around or rattle around although there will be a mattress and bedding on top, so they shouldn't rattle in theory, I guess. But I think I'm all done. Now I've got to get this back in the van, put everything else back in, and then I've got some major cleanup to do. I've almost got everything put back into place. I've got a few more things to move around, but what I found fascinating here is because I don't have the structure that I did before, and I just have 4 legs on the corners of the bed frame, I've got a lot more space under my bed. So I've moved things around a little bit. I've got a little different arrangement under here than I had before, which is nice. I've been wanting to do that, but I was kind of locked into only having things where I could fit them because I was having to work around the bracing and the other feet that I had in place with the old bed. So this is much better, and it's something I didn't anticipate, so that's pretty cool. Now, I've got a bit of an issue to deal with. I've got the old bracing there, and the old bed slats to deal with here. So what I'm going to have to do is, I left my drill and saw out. I'm going to have to take all the screws out of them and break them down. Probably have to saw down the longer pieces and then fit them in the van somewhere until I can find a place to dispose of them. A little concerned about what I'm going to do with them, but I guess I'll worry about that when I need to. Okay, it's done. Just about killed me, but at long last I've got it all broken down. I'm going to try to put it on the passenger seat because I'm not giving anybody a ride, I don't think, anytime soon. At least I don't think I am. But I got to put it somewhere. And I've got a couple of bags of trash to deal with too. Part of why this took so long is I had some foam and some other insulation on this that I had to scrape off because it was hiding some of the screws. So to get to the screw heads, I had to scrape it all off. So that was a lot of fun. I'm a little bloody. My back is sore. I would like some coffee, but I'm close to being done. Yeah, I didn't think I was ever going to finish cleaning up. I am wore out. My back is killing me. But the good news about doing this is my bed is much more comfortable than it's ever been. This is amazing. There's a bit of spring to it now that it didn't have before because of the slats and how they're made to kind of give you that box spring kind of feel. Funny thing, my mattress is wore out. I've been waiting to get to a Fred Meyer store to replace it. That's where I bought it originally. They sell them as a sofa bed for RVs, and they're actually on sale, where they were on sale 2 weeks ago when I was in a Fred Meyer. But I was putting it off just because I didn't want to buy a new mattress and then have it sitting outside while I was doing this work. But it almost doesn't even feel like my mattress is bad anymore because of just how comfortable the springy slats are. So, very good news. I'm going to sleep like a baby tonight. Probably need to set an alarm to wake myself up tomorrow. It's been a long day. So, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.